My name is Myrna Roberts. Welcome to TatumsTalk, the first talk show designed exclusively to talk about Tatums, one of 50 original all-black towns in what is now known as Oklahoma, but formerly known as Indian Territory. Today, our special guest is a native of Tatums, born and raised. He's a personal friend of mine, and he's a pretty prolific figure in the criminal justice system across America. Our guest today is none other than Lester Leroy Young.
Everybody in Tatum know me as Leroy.
Tell me about what it was like to grow up in Tatums.
My growing up in Tatum was very interesting because the fact that I had so many relatives there, and growing up in a small minority or black community was very advantageous, shall I say, to the people that were living there. A lot of the things we did not get involved with until they created the first NAACP chapter there in Tatum by the Varners and the Strongs and all of those people that got together and started that. So we got to go to some of the marches on in Oklahoma City that they were doing against Nichols Hills. And
Really?
Yeah, we got to rode a bus up there. It was very scary to experience some of that. They had all the guidelines for it. Don't say anything back to people when they're talking to you or say anything. Shout stuff at you. Go do your march and come on out of there, because there were no blacks in Nichols Hills at that time. I never did live in the town of Tatum. I always lived in the country. We were on the when I was born. You probably know Dead Man's Curve down there. They used to call it, where they race over the hill down to that curve.
That's right.
And then on past that was the Bikes house right there. In that field on top of the hill was Mr. Sun Bikes, and he was one of the local barbers. Everybody went to his house on Friday evening or Saturday evening to get their hair cut for Sunday.
Now was that, which side of Dead Man's Curve are we working? Like,
we're talking on the south side. Yeah, if you're coming from Tatum, everything was on the south side of the road.
Okay.
The land on the north side, I don't know if that was owned by a white family. I tend to think that it was, along the Wild Horse River, where y'all were at that Wild Horse Bridge, down there to the bridge that come out of Elmore City.
Right.
That was owned by I think maybe a white family and Uncle Shane. Uncle Shane had maybe 60 or 80 acres down there that he had a pecan field. We lived right across the road from that field in a little old rundown shack of a house where I was born, and Dad and the Youngs were living there, and the Drains were living not too far from there.
Right.
And so
where was it in relation?
Grandma, that was Grandma and Grandpa Young's house down there on the side of the road. Then Grandma Gracie. And so we would go across the road down into Uncle Shane's field and harvest pecans, and Mom would pull the wagon, or Dad, whatever they working and stuff like that. So that's where it grew up. Then when Highway 81 was not built yet, and that was when my dad had a wreck, but they didn't put up markers back then, and he broke Grandma Grace's back in the wreck, and she was living there in one of those full back braces when she died. And then that's how they got after the death, Grandfather was able to collect on the insurance from the state for not marking the highway, and they bought the land that we currently live on. So we've only lived in Tatum ever since it began in two different places. As far as my family was concerned, right there on the highway or over there on our I would consider our original home place, but I was the only one born then, and the rest of the family, I think, was born over there. All the rest of the 7 kids was born on the other side. Maybe Dave, the second boy, was born there, but everybody else was born where we live and where we currently live now. So that's almost 70 years of history, not quite, but from where we lived in the country. But grandfather and them, we only had one family member that lived in the city, and that was Uncle Shane. He's always lived on that corner there by that store until he was passed and went into the nursing home, and so did Grandpa. I think he lived to be 104 maybe, and Grandpa
definitely a centurion.
Yeah, and Grandpa was 103. And when he died in the nursing home there in Davis, outside of Davis, Oklahoma. So they were, they were some of the stalwarts there. So being down there, we'd always either out of the country ride horses or bicycles or walk wherever we went over to Grandpa's house, back through fields, things that we would never do today at night or whatever. We'd walk through the woods and go to where we wanted to go and visit our friends and our family members. So if you come outside of Tatum and where Miss O'Gill used to live and go south, then there was a lot of the Hookses lived on that road, and the Mitchells, and we were all family members. Aunt Essie and Aunt Barbara Mitchell were all our, they were my aunts. From my grandfather's side, and so then so going to school, I guess they had this little ramshackle bus, but Uncle Bert lived right up the road, and his wife was my mama's sister, so the McConnells.
Bert McConnell, right.
So that was, we always was running that road, walking that mile and a half up there to all the kids and playing. But Grandpa and them came in on the covered wagon to stake out the land down there for the Bradys. That's out by Springer, Mamie Brady and her husband. They sent 2 black people over, and one of them was Uncle Shane, one of them to sit on some land when statehood was getting ready to come about, and they were the ones selected. And if a lot of the people don't know that well, I guess a lot of people might know if they were back there, that Uncle Shane was one of the first ones to build. His store was the longest lasting. That big old rock brick looking building on the corner of the street right there by the Varner's grocery store was one of the first grocery stores that was there, and had a little bit there, and it kept it going until he got too old to do it, and it fell in on itself, and they had to tear it down for safety.
Right. But even when I was a little girl, I think they were cutting hair or something.
Yeah, they had cut hair in there. They had little cookies in there, and they would buy the pecans from the pecan farmers, and they had their little barbecue food places and little jute joints that they would go and play music and have a little food in. I think the Swindalls is on that same road where the Wild House is, and so they used to have a place to eat and dance right there. Thank you for your interest in Tatum and the things that you did with the pipeline. That was very impressive, and having the what tribe was it? Black Chickasaw Freedman presentation, and I would like to know a little bit more about that. I think that the message should have probably went out to the people at Tatum so they could have came down and support the event, and maybe they'll once it gets posted around town, maybe some more would come out and look at. A lot of the people are have some kind of freedman background.
Absolutely.
And I know that Aaron Carr, my grandfather on my mother's side, I know that supposedly Leslie was had some Native American blood. We did track down a Chickasaw roll number for one of our grandmothers. My brother Harold did out of Ada, and we got the roll number, but they said it was nothing that could be done with that number because they did not sign the federal agreement when they went. I think there were one of maybe two tribes that didn't sign it to recognize the freedmen. So, but we do have a freedman roll number that's on file there in Ada at the Chickasaw records area for the tribe.
Yes, there will be another Chickasaw Freedmen reunion. That one was very spur of the moment because we had the lawsuit was going on and we wanted to notify everyone. But this is a vision that several other people are hoping that we'll undertake, and so that's something that's upcoming. Yes, thank you for getting me back on track.